You can play and can memorize a few songs, but sometimes you get this feeling that you may not have the foundations or the techniques right, and you're afraid of progressing too far and having all these knowledge gaps later to deal with. Thank you to Grigory for asking this question, but it's basically on what are some of the general expectations for piano skills in the first few years. And we're not talking about pieces or songs, but more like general skills such as trills or arpeggios or scales and playing hands together and how fast, that kind of thing. Today we're going to answer this question, but it's not my intention today to teach you step by step how to do these things, but rather to give you a bit of a checklist to tick things off from. If you want more in-depth tutorials on how to do these things, you can let us know in the comments or maybe do your own research. First year. In your first year of piano playing, it's all about getting your hands dirty and playing some simple songs. You're learning how to coordinate your hands. It's fun, it's engaging, it's also really good for your brain health. Here are some of my expectations by the first year of piano playing. One of the biggest mistakes I see of elementary beginners is the lack of an ability to play legato, the lack of ability to play smoothly. For example, in the little piece I played before, they might play something like this. Rather than So as a goal in your first year, I want you to really focus on this legato and smooth playing. And that's the idea of striking a note. And when you're striking the next note, you're striking the next one before the first one comes up. So it looks something like this. Rather than the correct sound is, and the incorrect sound is. The first one is a lot harder to do. It requires more coordination, but this is going to be a very key and fundamental skill to playing more complex pieces in the future. Or these are all beautiful pieces that require a legato technique. So please try to focus on this. Focus on joining everything. Now I know not all pieces require the legato technique. Some pieces might be more of a short and staccato kind of piece. But still, whenever there is a piece that requires that kind of smooth playing, really try to focus on it and try to join everything. The legato sound is the mark of a pro sound rather than an amateur sound. So give extra time to work on this. Next, you should be working on scales. A good guide is to, let's say, learn one per week. If you just look at the circle of fifths and you go around the circle, learn one per week. So let's say you can start with C major. Learning scales, in my opinion, tackles a couple of things. Firstly, it's a pretty good technical warm-up. So before you go and play your songs, it's really good to practice the left hand and the right hand, and also together, get that coordination going before you play your songs. It works on finger independence. Works on finger strength, dexterity, all that kind of thing. So it's a really good technical exercise. And another bonus that not a lot of people think about is that it also exposes you to learning music theory when you're working on your scales. So let's say we learn C major first, and then you move on to G major and then D major, and you add the sharps in. So C major has no sharps, no flats. G major, the next one, has one sharp, so. And the next one, D major, in the circle, has now two sharps. By learning scales, you're exposing yourself to music theory. You're learning the science behind why music sound the way they do. In your first year of playing, having some exposure to music theory is going to be really, really helpful. It's pretty common for me to work with online students, and for these students to come in their kind of fourth or fifth year of practicing, they can play their pieces pretty well. But when I ask them to start at certain random points, or when I ask them to say, oh, can you please play that D minor part? They go, oh, what do you mean? It's like they're able to physically churn out the piece, but they don't really understand what they're doing. They give me a feeling of, it's like someone, let's say, reciting a speech in another language that they don't know, and they can recite that speech really well, but they don't really know what they're saying. To not have this problem in the future, it's really important to learn a little bit of music theory. So start with scales, learn some key signatures, and build a little bit at a time every day. Next thing I think you should work on in the first year are piano chords. So just for easy sake, let's start with C major. We're going to do C, E, G. So these are individual notes, but when you put them together, they're called either a chord or a triad. It's a very nice sound, C, E, G. This is called the root position of the chord. It's the most basic form of it. So the preferred fingerings, I would say, are 1, 3, 5 for right hand. And there are now multiple ways to play that. So if you just put the C on top here, see, this also is kind of like the same sound, but we're just kind of rearranging the notes now. So now instead of C, E, G, it's E, G, C. And the preferred fingering I have for this is 1, 2, 5. And let's now yet go to another one. This is now called the second inversion. Okay, this is now G, C, and E. Still the same notes, but rearranged differently. Second inversion. The fingerings for this are 1, 3, 5 for right hand. So you can try to play all these different types together. It'd be really good to know in your first year what these are. So the chords, the inversions. This is the root chord. This is the first inversion. This is the second inversion. And the next one up is going back to the root position, C, E, G. The left-hand fingerings are 1, 3, 5 for root, 1, 3, 5 for first inversion, and 1, 2, 5 for second inversion. Here are some quick exercises to work on the chords and the hand shapes. I call this the block exercise. And going down. Another exercise you can do is to break up the chord. So this is called the broken exercise. And now going down. I'm playing them a little bit faster today, but please go at a speed that you can control. Slow and controlled is always better than fast and messy. Let's talk about some techniques in your second year of playing. In the second year of playing piano, I like to think about this year as expanding your range. So instead of playing the notes that are directly in front of you, maybe you might start to expand a little bit out into the outer regions to your right and left. One technique to work on in your second year are arpeggios. So for example, let's say in C major, C, E, G. Now instead of doing 1, 3, 5 for the right hand, let's do 1, 2, 3, but we're gonna do more than one octaves. For example, like this. And left hand looks like this. Start to do arpeggios for C major, for different keys, and even play them together. The next technique to work on in your year number 2 is, I think, to start using the sustain pedal. So the sustain pedal helps us to sustain the sounds. Let's play this piece without the sustain pedal. It sounds something like this. And now with the pedal. Much better, much more grand, it's smoother, it's more ballady, it's more romantic. So learning how to use the pedal is going to be a really good skill to do in your second year. Lots of students tell me that learning how to use the pedal is a huge brain effort. It's like a third limb. Not only do you have to use already 2 limbs and doing different things with the 2 limbs, you now need a third one. But the good news about learning how to pedal is once you learn it once, the technique of using a pedal is completely the same for all pieces. So learn it once, apply it to the songs that need pedal. It's going to be really, really beautiful. And that exact skill is transferable to all pieces. Next technique to learn are octaves. I was just playing there the C major octaves. You can do it on other scales too. You can do it, let's say, on G major. But I think it's a good idea in your second year to start to spread your fingers and learn how to do this action. It looks something like this. You want to rotate your wrist very slightly up and down, kind of like knocking on something, knocking on a door, bum, 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 rather than sort of moving your whole arm like that. You can create your own exercises. You can do scales, you can do maybe arpeggios. You might even do maybe, let's say, chromatic scales. This is where you move up and down the piano and you play all notes, white and black. If you can, I suggest trying to use your finger number 4 for the black notes. If you can't, using 5 is fine as well. Let's bring our attention back to scales for a moment. In your second year of playing, obviously you're a little bit more comfortable with going up and down the piano. So what you can try to do is aim for a higher speed. But of course, you want to do it within control. If you feel like you're ever playing your scale and you feel like you can't really mindfully think about each note as you're striking it, it's probably currently a little bit too fast. Remember that in piano playing, every single strike should be a mindful experience. This is the only way to have fast but clean technique. Rather than you should also start to expand outside the single octave. So instead of playing 1, you should try to do 2 or perhaps 4. If we just go back to C major, the fingerings are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And instead of ending with your pinky, you basically just kind of thumb tuck again, down like this, and do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 again, for however many octaves you want. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And whenever you want to end, you just go pinky and then come down the same way that you went up. Next concept I want to bring us to is regarding finger independence. So in this year, you really want to start to make sure that each of your finger has the strength to strike notes without relying too much on the other fingers. I posted recently a simple finger independence exercise I want to share with you today. It's where you basically go to any 5-key group, you press all of them down at the same time. So let's say G, A, B, C, D, press them all down at the same time. And you're gonna, whilst pressing the other 4 fingers, play one of the notes like this. And go next one, while keeping everything else down. It's not easy, especially number 4. So practice that with your right and your left hand, and you're gonna really build some good mobility, good flexibility, and good strength for each finger. Moving now into our third year of piano playing, the first technique I want to introduce us to are trills. In your third year of playing, now that you have some finger independence, you have some control, it's time to do some harder things such as trills. So, for example, if we just trill on the F sharp and the G sharp, the proper technique to doing this is to keep all of the finger relaxed. So let's say if we're trilling on 2 and 3, 1, 4, and 5 should be very relaxed, and just doing a very light fluttering movement like this. If you want an exercise to help control it a little better, hold down 1, 4, and 5 on other notes. For example, hold down these ones and then try to trill like this. It's very, very difficult, but it'll help to build that independence of these 2 fingers. If your fingers are kind of flying up, I see a lot of beginners tend to have their kind of pinky and their 4th finger fly up. They do something like this. This is not very good control at the moment, so I suggest you to do the exercise, which is to hold down 1, 4, and 5, and to then trill with the relevant fingers like that. Another technique I want you to work on in your third year are arpeggios with 7ths. Okay, so instead of our instead of that, let's add a 7th note to it. So we're going to do some, let's say a dominant 7th. Okay, so instead of C, E, G, we want to do C, E, G, and a B flat as well. So it looks something like this. Left hand looks something like this. Again, coming back to this idea of not too fast, slow, and controlled. Only when it's controlled do you go faster. In your third year, you'll probably want to experiment more with complex rhythms. In your third year, now that you've built some finger independence, you've built some control, it's time to really push your sense of rhythm. So work on pieces that have more complex rhythms such as syncopation or polyrhythms. Syncopation basically means to have your hands play on beats that are offbeat. So this is not syncopation. But this next one is syncopation. Let's now go back to scales for a second. And in scales, instead of doing just our usual way, let's also now try to do some thirds and some sixths. So let's say with B major. Instead of playing hands together like this, you can try to play the right hand, let's say starting on B, but the left hand, instead of starting on B, you can start on the D sharp. This is called a sixth. Nice, huh? Or if you flip it around, so left hand starting on the root note, but the right hand is starting on the third note. So let's say left hand on B, and the right hand on the D sharp, which is the third above. And do this for all the scales you know. As a third year piano player, you want to challenge yourself with harder and harder pieces. As a general rule of thumb, play pieces with more notes in them. That sounds a bit simplistic, but at least on face value, just look at a piece. If it has a lot of notes in it, it probably means it takes a bit of work to wrap your head around. Challenge yourself with pieces that contain more notes in them. We've come to the end of some of these starting guidelines for piano foundations and technical skills you need to work on. Which of these techniques do you struggle with the most? Let us know in the comments below. Let's share what's difficult and what's easy for us. Please share and let's help each other improve. If you have other piano questions, please also comment them down below because 90% of our content comes from your questions. Catch you in the next tutorial.